Welcome, friends. It's going to be fun. Alrighty. Fantastic. I'm seeing some familiar names and some less familiar names, which is always nice. Thank you for hanging out with us for lunch. Hey, Matt. Yeah, the last minute registrations are a thing that happens, hey? I'm so glad. Okay, fantastic. Hey, friends. Well, I suppose without further ado, we're looking at most of our friends rolling in slowly. So thank you so much for joining us for lunch. Let's see if everyone's getting access. I see there are a couple of people who are still registering. Fingers crossed Zoom still plays along. So welcome, Derillians and friends of the Forge. It's really nice to have you here. My name is Anine, and today is going to be a very interesting session, probably one of the more technical sessions that we've done in a couple of months, and I'm very excited for it. Ben and Bill, thank you so much for taking the time and putting together this amazing presentation. We're going to look a little bit into how secure your password is, and we're going to do a little bit of hacking, but you know, it's not really hacking if you're one of the good guys, so we'll see. And this is a little bit more of an informative session, so you'll see in the chat section there are some links for you guys to read up on. So be sure and check them out, especially afterwards, as we are going to dig into some pretty technical terms. So as a starting point, I'm going to throw out a little poll while Ben and Bill introduce themselves, because cybercrime is real, and I'd love to know, have you guys been affected by cybercrime? And we'll unpack what happened maybe a little bit later. So as always, the sessions are recorded. If you have to drop off a little bit early, it will be available on YouTube within a couple of days, but please feel free to leave us comments and questions. We will get to them as we progress. The session does have a live demo, so let's see how everything runs, and it's going to be really interesting. I agree, Peter. Ben looks super wise, and I mean, Bill always looks wise. It's a standard for him. So thank you so much, Ben and Bill. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves so long?
Okay, so I'm Ben. I'm a senior software developer for Derial, focusing mostly in the fintech industry. And in the recent last about 2 years or so, I've started researching security as an augmentation of my current skill set, and found that I actually do have a fairly large passion for this.
Okay, my name is Bill. I'm a tech lead here at Derial. I've been sort of passionate about passwords and security for a long time. Only recently had a chance to start working with it, but it's all fun, and let's see how the session goes.
I love that we caveat for the sessions that it's all fun. This is really not us trying to hack anyone. So I'm very curious to see how this goes. So Ben and Bill, I'm going to turn off my camera and I'm going to hand the floor over to you guys. And for now, quite interestingly, the first poll, it looks like about 73% of our current audience have been affected by cybercrime. Well, and my apologies, the opposite, haven't been affected, but about 30% have. So such a good reason for us to look into this session. So Ben, just let me know when you want to run the second one.
Yeah, we can start that one now to try and get a basic understanding.
Super, we are started.
On this one, I would like to hear from you guys. Given that I'm not using reverse lookups and I'm not using brute force, what is the chance of me cracking some SHA-256 hashes during the time of this session? All right, so yeah, just the introduction for this. We are going to look at a couple of tools and basics that we need to understand when it comes to password security. Your password needs to be strong because it is the center of your identity, your online digital identity. If your identity gets stolen, then the problem immediately starts. So often people think about passwords as fairly mundane. It should not be. It should be, I mean, this is the first barrier between your online identity and that of the criminal underworld or cybercrime. Okay, so your credentials are the income of criminals. It is not just selling of usernames and passwords. Once people get access to your credentials, they may use that as a jumping point to start collecting data from your company, or privilege escalation and get admin access into your company. So your credentials needs to be super secure, because you have also a responsibility to keep that of your employer or your household, to keep those identities safe. Roughly about 30,000 websites are hacked every single day. South Africa is the third biggest target, receiving 577 attacks per hour. Let that sink in. Per hour, 577 cyber attacks per hour in South Africa. Right, so cracking the hash is the easy part of cybercrime. Cracking hashes is not, or hashing is not the be-all and end-all of ensuring that your passwords are safe. So we'll get into some methods like salting and so forth a little bit further in the talk. Okay, the devastating effects of security breaches is real. If we look back at the Ashley Madison leak from a couple of years ago, that is something we can call it adultery as a service. So you would sign up, you would search for people willing to cheat with you, and that also turned out to be mostly fake, because it was bots that contacted you, and if you wanted to reply, you had to pay them with your credit card. But then the net effect of that hack was unfortunately quite a bit of suicide and divorce. So yes, although a bit unmoral, that sort of data should be protected. We are in a position, sorry, Bill, this was you.
Yes, I'm saying there, we are in the position of trust as we develop the system. So being developers, which I think is the vast majority of the people who are watching this presentation, we work in the finance sector or in the healthcare sector or in several of the other sectors. And if your password is insecure, think of the devastating effect. I mean, I know I have access to the main database of one of the large financial institutions in South Africa. That's quite a bit of responsibility if you think about the devastating effects of a security breach. And that being said, if you do not take an interest in password security and try and enforce some of the security principles that we're going to talk about later, you're actually opening up your clients to these security breaches and to these attacks. And that's why it's important that we as developers and technical personnel understand why we say the password needs to be secure, because it is that gateway key. And just think about your own personal access. What can someone do if they access that database?
Okay, so just for a bit of definition, because not everybody may be clued up on all these items. So firstly, the dark web is not this criminal syndicate hotspot nefarious place. It's just a completely unindexed portion of the internet that spider bots like Google cannot access. To access the dark web, you need to go through something called the onion router. This is a piece of software that you install, and this basically takes your connection and jumps it over a couple of countries through the world, and none of the nodes know about each other. You only know about the node that you're sending to and the node that you will be receiving from. There are things like exit nodes, entry nodes, and then all the nodes in the middle, and all the traffic is encrypted on this network. Okay, so combo lists is a way that cyber criminals deal in credentials. So selling usernames and passwords that has been breached in the past. And we know that people tend to use the same password on multiple sites. So if they hacked your MyFitnessPal account, then, which has happened, all 150 million users that was on MyFitnessPal, their usernames and passwords has been leaked. Those combo lists are sold on something called dark web market. So yes, there is a strong crime element to the dark web. And on these onion sites, you can have dark web markets that sells narcotics and weapons, and yes, your combo list and your username and password. Also, cyber criminals, they're not exactly stupid. They are also trying to build a business, albeit an illegal one. So they've come up with a way to make more money from these credentials, these combo lists, that they call combo list as a service. So you would pay a small fee per query with results on one of these combo lists as a service. So they keep on selling the same data over and over and over and keep on making money from it, which is in principle how these businesses work. Then we're also going to touch on something called rainbow tables. It's a fairly old technology. Some reckon it's at its end of life or obsolete, which I tend to disagree with, especially if you're going to do professional pen testing, then having a large set of rainbow tables will be to an advantage for you. Next slide. Okay, so you may not believe all of this. So I first want to give a word of caution. So some of the tools that you're about to see can land you in a lot of hot water if you use them incorrectly or for nefarious reasons. You have to remember that we as developers are the vanguard. So we are on the front line of protecting that of our customers and so forth. Right, so for now, I'm just quickly going to share my screen. And we'll start with a simple demo of KeePass XC.
While we are going through that, it looks like the overwhelming responses that you guys definitely can crack. And yeah, 60%, just saying the odds are in your favor today.
That is some very good news. We're going to try and live up to that name. I see there was just a chat saying, what about the passwordless entry? Yes. That is a technique that people are moving to, and it can only get better. Unfortunately, there are always those occasional cases where the password is still there. I know the good old-fashioned, the old SQL, the old versions of Windows, when you first started getting password fingerprint authentication. What it did is it just used the fingerprint to encrypt the password. And it also had a password to encrypt the fingerprint. So you could just crack that password and get through it. Yes, passwordless is the way to go, but there's always that root password sitting around somewhere that stores everything. It's great for users, but not very good for the back-end technical people. But it's an option. I'm glad you brought it up.
I just want to find out, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So what we've got here is KeePass XC. This is my preferred password manager because it never goes online. I know that it's a bit of a pain to manually synchronize, copy the database if you've made changes on some places, but I just want to show you what some of the functionality that comes with this. So let's go create a new group, test, then create a new, new entry. So demo, and let me do this to show you what my typical passwords may look like. And this is something that we also need to touch on. You need to include UTF-32 characters in your password. There's some other special characters that you need. So I'll generate something similar to this. You'll see it's got an entropy of 200 or more. That's normally what I aim for. It's a bit overkill at this stage, but at the rate that technology is improving, I mean, 5 years ago, you had the top tier GPU was running about, I think, 1,000 cores or thereabout. Today, the top tier being the 3090 RTX runs 11,000 cores at 1.4 gigahertz each. So just think about that computing power and what you will be able to do 5 years from now. So in order to break this whole black hat aggregation machine, I like to include a colon and I like to include a semicolon, because these combo lists are normally separated by each one of those two characters. Then I also include some UTF characters. You can even add like the poop emoji as part of your password. And that is not something that brute forces or even rainbow tables or password stuffing lists or things like that will typically cater for. So then we can say apply password and we'll just do it like that. So firstly, what I can do here is I can say copy username, and then I would like to direct your attention on this clipboard where it will be clearing the clipboard automatically. And you can change that to 5 seconds, 2 seconds, or whatever the case may be. And then obviously the same for password. But the other nice feature is it's got something called perform autotype. So that way your credentials doesn't even ever enter into the clipboard, because somebody might be listening. If they've installed or had access to your machine before, they might be installing something that monitors your clipboard. So I can do a perform autotype, and there we go. It typed the username and the password for me. Right, so that's the easy bit around KeePass Exceed. So
yep. If I may just jump in here, KeePass does actually have several implementations, including the version I use as KeePass Droid on my Android device. It actually creates its own keyboard. So similar to what you do with a copy paste here, you can actually use the keyboard to enter it. The nice thing about it is, of the 5,000 odd passwords I know that are in my KeePass store, I cannot type anyone because I don't know any of them. I know my primary key store password, so I can log into it, but I don't know any of the others. And most of them are quite long. But yeah.
Yes, so that is something that I also wanted to mention. At this point in time, we should not really be typing passwords anymore. Get your software to type it for you. Your password actually shouldn't even be readable. That way you know that you've got a secure password. And then, yeah, I mean, if it's a password for your Windows machine or for, something trivial, just make sure that it's a password that you've never used before. But if you're going to protect customer data via your account, just ensure that it's a really strong password. Okay, sorry, what was the next point on the...
It's the use of cracking as a service.
Oh, okay, yes. So I'm going to expose some of my personal data, and then you'll be able to see. So this is typically a combo list as a service. So I'm going to put in my personal... Oh, why is he not typing? Okay, I'm going to type in my personal email address. We're going to hit search.
So this is actually an Onion site, a deep website that Ben
Yes.
is using.
Yeah, so you will see that it's not a .com or a .net or something, it's got .onion.
Yeah. And so you need the Tor browser, which is connecting to the Onion router directly. And here is the MD5 hash of the password that leaked a while back from Last FM.
Yes, from, I think, yeah, this breach was, 2012. Oh, no, sorry, I joined 2011 and 2012 this was leaked. Okay, then I just want to see if I...
Yes, Gilad, MD5, gasp. That is the point we are trying to make here.
Yeah.
I see Gilad's also asked us a question on how often should a person change their master password for the respective password manager. So what is sort of the cadence there?
That is a very good question, and that all depends on how often the password file gets leaked. If I was using something like a LastPass, which is an online service, I would definitely be changing it probably monthly, probably within the 40 days. But if you have full control of the file, it's a good idea to get into the rhythm of changing it, but you don't have to go wild. Yeah. At least that is my opinion, Ben.
Okay, so yeah, my file stays offline, so I change it maybe once a year. I'm going to show you now how easy MD5 is, and if you ever see MD5 anywhere, then yeah, that shouldn't happen. I'm literally using a search engine called #toolkit. I'm going to search it, and there's my old stale password. That is how easy it is to break this. Okay, so the next step, I want to check. I want to do a demo. Have you guys entered some SHA-256 hashes?
No, I think this might be a good time to expose the link. So what we've got is we've just written a quick Angular thing. Please don't judge my front-end skills. What it does is essentially it computes a SHA-256 hash on the front end. It does send it to a DynamoDB in the back end, and Ben is going to grab those. So, Anine, can you share that link maybe in the chat?
Fantastic. I must just quickly make sure I've got it on hand. Hold on a second. I know you guys sent it through to me in the planning session as well. And then one thing. Hold on. I just want to also run past. I see that we have a shared link for Have I Been Pwned, the domain. And I see Jock has also asked us, is it possible for us to see if actually Dariel.co.za has been compromised? And I'm sure that that is possible. I don't know if it's possible live. Thank you.
Yes, Dariel has been compromised by one of the previous sales systems that was used in the early days.
Okay. Are you happy with the link, or do you want me to send the other ones as well?
Oh, I've just sent that link. We are actually going to be talking about Have I Been Pwned later in the slide. Yeah. It is great to know that people are aware of it. So yeah, if we can just have people start entering about 3 or 4 passwords. Maybe choose it. Yeah.
Click on the link and let's have some fun. I'm sorry, this is actually most people's worst nightmare, choosing many, many different unique passwords.
Okay, so in essence, the rules for the password is 6 characters long, alphanumeric, upper and lower, and all numbers.
Yeah, and please remember to hit submit once you're happy. See, we have 4 already. Maybe let's give 1 or 2 more. Okay, we now have 6. So I think Ben.
All right. I'm going to extract from the database. Ignore that error. That is what happens when you code in a big hurry. All right. So we've got cat hashes.txt. All right. So as you can see, there's no other information stored in this file. What I'm going to do now. All right. So we're going to run a rainbow crack on this file. And let's see how far we go. So now it takes all these things, bring it into memory, and then it's going to run it against these rainbow tables. I've got a link for you that explains how the rainbow tables work. something that you might want to consider, specifically look into the reduction function, because that is the magic, where the magic happens, and why this is not considered a reverse lookup at all. All right, I think, Bill, maybe if you can just share your screen, we'll let this run for a bit, and then yeah, we can come back to it a little bit later, because this might take up to about 10-20 minutes.
Okay, so while we're looking at the break hashing in the background, I see I got a sight of the passwords. There's a very interesting one there. We'll see what it does. So yeah, this is what you should know.
Okay, so they want your data. As I said in one of the previous entries or slides, cyber criminals make money off your data. So they want a lot of things. Brute force is not a dead technology, which I've hinted towards before. If you set up let's take a mining rig that consists of 4 3090 RTX cards, that puts you on 44,000 cores, each running 1.4 gigahertz. And you install this on a motherboard that supports DDR5 RAM, which was launched November last year. It's ridiculously fast. And the card is running on DDR6. Brute force is not a dead technology at all. Correct whole staple battery. I know a lot of people like to hammer on this as the easy solution. But now I want you to consider, instead of thinking about the traditional way of cracking a password like that. Yes, that is going to be a fairly strong password. But let's consider each word as an English word correlates to a character. Then your password is only 4 characters long. So instead of using like the test A, B, I, C, etc., treat the words as characters. That way you can basically attack this type of password as well. As I said before, salting is also not the be all and end all for securing your hash. And there are concepts, for instance, called pepper, where you can store an additional, let's call it the salt type string, that you can add into the encrypted or the hashed string, which is not referenced anywhere in the database. So if your database was the foothold into a hack, that means that they've already got your salt. If I can maybe mention something like Joomla. Joomla stores a single salt that it applies to all the passwords or users that registers on that Joomla website. I don't know if that's still the case, but it certainly was the case a couple of years back. Using a paper that's either sitting on a hardware key or completely separated, or even there was a popular thing about paper is just don't specify it anywhere. Your login process knows that there's a hidden paper that needs to be added, so it just guesses 26 characters, or if it's 2 characters, just do it twice. Or you know the sort of characters that you might add into that hash, and you just apply that in your backend code. And then Bill will cover the difference between encryption and hashing.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Yeah, the big thing about the salt is it's usually per user, and it's usually stored with the same user. So if you look at the standard PHP password generator, it actually stores the hash in the same column as the password. And that's where the pepper comes in. Typically, you store it in like a cloud HSM or a hardware security module, completely separate. The big thing is it mustn't really be in your database with the other stored hashes. And that, of course, brings us the difference. What is the difference between encryption and hashing? When you talk passwords, you should never think encryption, because the big thing about encryption is it can be reversed. So with encryption, you have your plain text and you have your key. You put the two together, you get the ciphertext. Then you take the ciphertext and the key, put them together, and you get the plain text password out. Now, there are cases where you need to encrypt the password. Typical examples of this is if you are acting on behalf of another user back in the bad old days. Therefore, you had to keep the password encrypted because you needed to reverse it and send it on. That type of technology has been superseded by the things like OAuth, which is an authentication system. You can work on behalf of someone else without knowing their password, because they then give you permission to use their service. And then you store a token, which is encrypted or hashed. It can be an opaque or a visible token. And that's all you have to store. Now, we're going to go on to a few things that I've seen in my career, which I call the fails and or wins. Now, the first one there is a lovely little regular expression. This is actually the updated version. This was from a site that does appear in the Have I Been Pwned website. And initially, they did not have this look, the first section, which is the look ahead. So their password restriction was you had to start with a capital letter. Then you could do something followed by a small case, lowercase, then a number, then a special character. They've now updated it to as long as it's 8 characters or more of those characters listed, it'll work. The problem is, of course, is as somebody mentioned earlier, that is a very limited space of special characters. And that is surprisingly only the characters that can go across an HTTP query parameter, which is probably where they get those restrictions. We'll talk later about that. Then a nice big financial institution here in South Africa, in the interests of security, decided to disable the paste option on the password field. You know, security, you have to type it. Yeah, I don't know my passwords. I use my password manager to type it in because it's more secure. I don't need to remember it. They reversed that process, I think, in 2 days from a big, nice overrun. And then we get what is sort of considered a win. This was a system I worked way back at the start of my career where we stored the username. Well, we needed the username and password to log in, and then a fingerprint. And we were like, but why do you do that? You know, the fingerprint is quite secure. But looking back, this is actually a form of multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is, if you really want to go into it, it's this 8 factors of authentication, but essentially comes back to ask me 2 things. Something, in this case, it's something I know, which is my password, and something I am, which is my biometric. I don't know if most of you have probably worked with Google Authenticator or the RSID tokens, or even the SMS where they SMS your number and you have to type it in. That is great. Then we get on to the miscellaneous systems where they've been storing all their passwords in clear text in the database. And then they read about this hashing thing that improves security. So let's add another column in our database called hashed password. But we never actually removed the clear text password out of the database. I think that's a kind of a big fail because now you essentially have a reverse lookup table sitting there. And yes, it does leak. And it is surprisingly how often this happens. Just a quote, Ben, how's the cracking going?
It's done. So I can maybe just share that screen quickly.
Okay.
Okay, so as you guys can see, it took a whopping 317 seconds to crack all of them. We were running train traversal. That's the other concept. If you're interested in how these things work and you read those documents, focus on the train traversal and the reduction function. But we were doing basically just a little bit over 3 million train traversals per second. And this is on a 2012 old Lenovo machine running 4 gigs of RAM. So yeah, that's quite impressive. So yeah, thank you guys for everybody that contributed to these passwords. I can see how easy it was.
Yeah, I see we have some lead speakers there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 00000, that's a lovely password. It is actually the default password for a lot of PIN entries.
And IoT devices.
And IoT devices used for security systems at doors. Anything where you see these fingerprint readers before you get into the door, 00000 sometimes actually gets into the administrative console, which is quite scary, which is another thing. Always change the default passwords.
Yeah. I see there's a little joke on my old cracked password from before. All right, Bill, you can present again.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so as I've mentioned before, you should not be typing your password. Use a password manager. As I said before, I like KeePass because it stays offline. For those of you that use the online password managers, ask yourself this. Did they use Log4j on that system where your credentials are stored? So your credentials may or may not be, we don't know yet, have already leaked from that if that company was running Log4j. For those that's not sure about this, Log4j was a massive security breach in December, and it had all of corporate world up in arms. Systems were disabled. Yeah, it was one of the biggest leaks of this decade so far. Break the aggregation machine, like I said before, add some UTF-32 characters where it is allowed. I know some websites do not allow UTF-32 characters, but then also include that colon and that semicolon, because if that password of yours does get hacked or breached, then add on the dark web, what they're going to do is they're going to start to aggregate all these different combo lists into like one massive list for their own personal use. They're going to split think of it as a CSV. So they're going to split the username from the password using the colon. Now, if you put a colon inside your password, they basically going to take array 0 is the username, array 1 is the password. But now that has been split into another section, array 2, and they're not going to save that portion of the password. So they're actually storing a faulty password of yours. Secure the passwords that you do type. So logging into your Windows system or opening up your password manager, obviously you're going to have to type that password. You can do that by the same rules. So include a UTF-32 character, a smiley face, Japanese or Hungarian character, or characters from multiple languages that you can access via the Alt keys if you're on Windows. Do that, and that password should still be safe. Also, make sure that it's around 12 or more characters at the very least. One thing that you also want to do is you want to follow Troy Hunt if specifically the construction of passwords and everything password related or breach related is of interest to you. You can follow Troy Hunt on your favorite social platform, and then also register on Have I Been Pwned. The moment one of your credentials is leaked, they will send you an email and notify you so you can act on it immediately.
Yeah. Now we go to the now what for developers, although Nina, I see there have been a couple of questions in the chat, which I think let me just address quickly. we're not actually using a hash table to crack these. Although you can, I don't know, Ben, you can probably tell us, does rainbow tables and hash tables, they're similar, but they are actually issues. This is actually the rainbow tables. There are some nice questions there. Unfortunately, I have not come across with a password manager that can work on the Windows login screen. So you may need to actually remember that password. And if you aren't allowed to install a password manager, have a chat with your security people. Otherwise, KeePass is available as what they call a portable app, which means you install it on a flash disk and it runs entirely from the flash disk. There's no installation. I know there are issues. You might not be able to use a flash disk, but you can. There are subtle ways around it. Alternatively, you can use something like Bitwarden or LastPass. Yes, Gillard, I know we're hitting on it, but they're better than nothing. And they are actually online, running entirely in your web browser. So you can copy and paste. It's a little bit manual, but it works and it helps. The online ones do have the benefit of actually saying, I want to share this password with somebody else. So you give them access to the password for a short amount of time and then automatically change it and things like that. But yes, I think we'll get back to some of the others a little bit later. But yes, so for us developers, talking about Have I Been Pwned, they actually have a very nice system that you can integrate with as a developer that checks if the leaked password, if the password that the user is typing in has been leaked or has appeared in any of the leaked hashes that they have on it. The nice thing is that the API is designed so that the password does not transit the wire. It is all done on client side. And that is phenomenal because it's a way of increasing security and awareness of leaked password. Then we say here, do not limit the characters that can be used. There is an entire Unicode code space that is massive. Try and allow users to do it, especially if your target users are mobile devices, because they can put emojis in very easily. So as we were talking before, having a poop emoji in your password is a wonderful thing, because the hackers and the crackers or the dark web people have not yet entered a stage where that is worthwhile for them. But it's coming. Then we talk about enforcing a minimum password length. Like we looked at one of the previous slides, make the guy do at least 8 characters, because that is seen as the bare minimum these days. And obviously go up to a maximum length. I'll come back to this in a moment. Use the salt and the pepper, because that literally it slows it down, because just using something like SHA-256, you can use you can either use rainbow tables or you can do reverse lookups. So you pre-calculate everything. Using a salt or a pepper just changes that outcome slightly, which means you stop it, which means the cracker has to go and start recalculating every time. Then we say here, choose the appropriate hashing algorithm and work factor. One thing we must realize is SHA-256 is designed as an extremely quick acting hashing algorithm. So that's why you should not actually use it for passwords. There are other things like bcrypt, which is a hashing algorithm, which is controlled by its work factor, which is how many times it runs the algorithm. It is designed to be slow. So we're talking the difference between 1 millisecond and 40 milliseconds or 80 milliseconds, which is fine for a single user. One user logging in 40 milliseconds, that's not a problem. But 1 millisecond means me as a hacker, I can run billions per second with the right hardware. So that's where the different algorithms. I see someone is asking, what is a good algorithm? That'll come now. of course, the big problem with bcrypt is it can only use 72 bytes maximum as the password. So there's a nice reasonable maximum length for a password. There are some other hashing algorithms or password algorithms that can go longer. A typical example is you actually use just take the password, use SHA-256 on it, which drops it down, and then bcrypt it. But remember, SHA-256 only gives you 32 bytes. It's about half the size of the bcrypt hash, which is once again reducing your password space. Then obviously enable and enforce the multi-factor authentication. As somebody mentioned earlier, if you don't use MFA, don't trust the site. So if they only use SMSs, be wary. And then we look at the Open Web Application Security Project. It's an open source community which evaluates algorithms. bcrypt is actually their third recommended algorithm. There are 2 others that they recommend. I've got the link there. We will share it later. But yes, they go through and they understand what it is that the passwords need, how they can do it. Okay. Ben, you're muted.
Yeah, the famous mute button. Okay, so in closing, never let your guard down. As I said before, 577 attacks per hour in South Africa. Those cyber criminals, they're trying, and they're not going to stop trying. So never let your guard down. For super secure things like the password for your network access onto a bank network or something like that, that definitely has to be, at least above 100 bits of entropy. And the use of UTF-32 is very important because that character space is not being utilized by the black hats as yet. We do not have the hardware at present to run that sort of computing, but this first samples of quantum computing has already succeeded. So there's like the Sycamore processor. It's not publicly available yet, but that time is also coming, where we can run these things on quantum computing, where you don't have bits, but you actually work with something called qubits. But that's another topic for another day. Then I just want to add some links for you to research. So the first thing, let's just see. Okay, so if you want a sort of an easy English level of understanding of rainbow tables, you can have a look at that one. If you want to look at the original white papers, but for that you need to have some maybe first a base understanding of the reduction function and so on, and then yeah, so have a look at those. It'll give you a pretty strong understanding of what's happening here. And thank you for joining, everybody. I really appreciate that. That concludes our webinar.
That's awesome. So I see we still have a couple of questions, and I must admit, I've also wondered, how does a site like Have I Been Pwned actually know that your information has been compromised? And what makes them more reliable than just another site where we're sharing our information?
Okay, so Troy Hunt is a director for Microsoft, which immediately puts him in a position of trust to a degree. And he's done an immense amount of research into this, and he's got his fingers on the dark web as well. People, if a breach has happened and somebody has had access to that breached information, they would send it to him. He's got a full lab where the data gets analyzed, it gets compared to previous leaks, because remember, these cyber criminals, they're still going to try and sell combo lists, regardless if they actually did a hack or not. So they might take previously exposed combo lists, combine a bunch of them, and then resell it to somebody else. So he confirms that data before it actually gets published. So yeah,
it's also a lot of the other security researchers around the world who monitor these dark web selling sites, who will actually pick it up and send it to him. including the master deeds list, which was leaked from South Africa, which is, for those who don't know, was a defunct credit bureau. So they have the complete information on every economically active South African from 1970 to 2005. This includes how much you earn, where you work, what you purchased, multiple email addresses, multiple addresses, and yes,
ID
and
numbers.
that has not been prosecuted yet, and I don't think it will be.
That is such a scary thought, to think that your information is that easily accessible. And I mean, just looking at what we did today, we weren't running on a super strong, super intense computer. And presumably a lot of these syndicates are really putting their money in, like you said, to make this a viable business. They're not running with an entry-level machine. So the volume is probably quite intense as well. But I must say, this was a very informative session. So many cool things have come through this. And I hope that it's given everyone a good reason to beef up their password game and let us know what happens afterwards. So thank you for putting together the time and spending some time with us doing this as well. I think we've run through all of the questions. There is one more. I don't think we've addressed Mohammed's one on do you guys think, what do you guys think about Google or GitHub sign-in on websites? I don't think we've addressed.
Yeah, so that is actually OAuth. It runs on OAuth or OpenIDC. It is better than nothing. Especially as a developer, because I no longer need to go to the hassle of storing a password and securing a password, because that's Google and GitHub or Microsoft's job. The problem is I now cannot enforce the security of the password, because I don't know. You can use password 123, which means it's immediately leaking. It is better. And I see Mandla also mentioned about using entropy. Yes, entropy is the layman's term for entropy is the chance of your character appearing within the space, which means is why a longer password will have greater entropy. But if you have more characters or a greater character set, then it is better. Ben, you have comments on that?
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. And I just want to mention on that Google, the browser where it stores your password, they also do lookups into previously breached data. So Google, in your browser, will tell you, this is a bad password, please change it.
Absolutely. I think maybe one last thing to wrap us up. What do you do if your information has, in fact, been compromised? Because you just get a list. You know, obviously, first step is probably to change your password, but is there anything else we should be doing?
Once the password has been changed, go through everything that somebody may have had access to and make sure that it hasn't been tampered with, and be honest with your employer if it was in a work situation to say that, listen, this password that I used on this machine or this account has been breached. So an unknown person may or may not have had access to this type of data. Don't try and hide it, because that is going to end up looking like, if they find out about it, they're going to ask you, like, why didn't you tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the concept of the honesty, and actually just the faster we have the information, the better. But yeah. Thank you so, so much, everyone. This was very interesting, very scary stuff, but very, very good. And I thank you for everyone for hanging out with us. I see Matt Law says all his memes will be stolen. I hope not. Your memes are excellent. We'll see you guys then for the next one, and the recording will be available soon. Have the best one, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.